Okay, I think we are on YouTube now. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Lunar Rhythm with Christeen Skinner. Once a month, me and Christeen will talk about the current transit and the current events. So, Christeen, how are you?
Well, I'm full of cold, as you can hear, but I'm really quite excited about this conversation for many different reasons. Of course, we're speaking just 24 hours ahead of me doing the event for you, but I'm also in the middle of various other things that are going on. So I don't actually know where I'm not inside today, right?
Well, that's a start with your current experience, because I think I saw a few of your photo. Our friend Alex take quite a lot of your photo. You're kind of, traveling in Istanbul with her. How's your experience in Istanbul?
Well, it was extraordinary. I mean, we are very lucky within the Astro community. You know that you're going to meet very interesting people. I just had no idea what that weekend was going to bring me. None at all.
Mm-hmm.
I was because I haven't been anywhere because of Michael's illness, I wasn't even sure that, well, to be honest, I was so bad-tempered before I even got on the flight because I didn't want to go. I wasn't prepared. I was really stressed out. But from the minute we got there, the hospitality was out of this world. I didn't know that Alex was going to be there. I didn't know that Omari was going to be there, or Stormy Grace. It all came as a bit of a shock. The students there were out of this world. Economically, they were so fun. I mean, they were economic students and all that. They were absolutely the best of the best of the best. So that it was brilliant. The setting was good. Everything about it was absolutely enchanting. However, the other thing I wasn't prepared for was that owner Dosa, who runs the school there, is really, really into the solar rhythms. Like totally into them. So he and I had so much to talk about on that level. And he really said, look, you've got to get a grip on this. You need to get another book out that's got this in it. And he had even gone to the trouble of sketching out what it should have in it. So it was the most remarkable sort of thing. So I'm now into that. And I'm now looking at 2027 and 2028. Which means I'm having real difficulty with the 13th of April in 2023, because I'm kind of not as anchored as I would like to be for this conversation. But I'm looking at interest rates, I'm looking at recessions, I'm looking at solar activity for them. So yes, I'm knee deep in some new research. But I'm also, which I thought you might find very interesting, because as you just spoke about the Jupiter-Chiron conjunction this week with the sun. You cannot imagine how many clients I've got involved in legal dramas. You just can't imagine it. I'm experiencing the Jupiter effect by being knee deep in publications and articles and all of that. But my clients are experiencing it as legal things. And that's touching on me a little bit, but it's really made me think about horror astrology, which is not my thing, right? But it's also made me think how some people attract legal dramas and other people don't. Right? I've got one client who's involved in 7 different court cases. You try untangling them. Right, just try untangling them, right? And 2 of them were taking place on the same day, just the other day, with the Sun-Jupiter conjunction. So he had one court case going on in the morning, another one in the afternoon. So yes, the ascendant and midheavens were different, and obviously those patterns. But the broad thing was all about discrepancy in bookkeeping, discrepancy in accurate counting. And it was all down to Aries. Every single thing he told me about was down to Aries. And I don't want to be rude about Aries, but Aries is quick, isn't it? It's impetuous, it's straight off. And so, and it's great at initiating. It's wonderful. The enterprises that were involved were full of really good, sound, creative ideas. But what wasn't there was no Virgo underneath it. And that's made me think about Chiron and whether or not Chiron is the real ruler of Virgo, because this was about data. if these people had the correct data, if the minutes had been kept properly, right? If there was a paper trail, great. But where the paper trail was missing, the case was falling apart. It's really, this has been a tremendous learning curve this week. It's so obvious, but it's just when it comes at you like that, you think, wow, this is really quite something.
Yeah, I really agree with you, because we all experience the same symbol in very different way. Like when you're talking about Jupiter-Chiron, and you kind of have a lot of demanding about publication, writing, and teaching,
Yeah.
and then your client is maybe is focused on the legal issue. Some of my friends, I don't know, have you noticed the news about the religion things, about the first Pope in very ill, and then Pope Francis image has been used by AI image that kind of a cause little bit controversial, and then Dalai Lama also fall into another kind of a, I don't know how to say, is that could be mistake, a scandal, trap, or anything. And more important is about people who believe in them. One of my friends write me a long message about she feels so disappointed, and she kind of don't know what to do with, because she's been believing him, trust him with all her life, and now she saw this. She was so disappointed. It is kind of a Chiron, Jupiter, and Sun conjunct in the Aries make us aware and the question about what we believe.
Yeah, I haven't, that's not been the conversations I've been having, but you bring up something interesting in that, because we all hear these transits, which are what they are, in different ways. So it is all like music, but we're tuned into certain different frequencies. So yes, some people would pick into the Jupiter as the philosophical or the religious, right? And others on the publications, some people on the further education. I mean, that's been another thing this week. Twice. I mean, I am not an educational counselor, right? Twice this week, I've been asked if I can recommend which A-levels some child should be doing, right? This is Jupiter, because how do they prepare for university, right? This is not my field at all, but it's just, as you say, it's interesting how these things appear on your desk in their different forms, and we understand it, right? But how do you convey that back to the client?
Yeah. Also, tomorrow we're going to talk about the foreign currency in my school, and it will be very interesting because that's another Jupiter area. But what drew my attention is you say you were writing something. Is that related to the things you just talked about?
Yes. Yeah, I'm involved in so many projects at the moment. I'm not sure. I'm actually, what is really funny about this is, here's another Jupiter Chiron thing. In order to package up my research, I bought some legal files. Those envelopes with the pink ribbon, right? I actually bought 24 of those. So I'm dropping my ideas into each of these, and I'm not yet sure what belongs to which book, but it's kind of that's an interesting thing, in that I'm trying to data manage a way that I haven't done before. So that's another thing. But we should also, I mean, tomorrow's, as I just said to you, I'm finding the preparation for tomorrow really challenging, because audiences are all different, and you need to make sure that people have left knowing more than when they came into the room, right? And more than that they don't sort of see that there's a whole ocean of stuff that they're never going to master. So this has been quite tricky for me to work this one out, because if you say we're going to talk about foreign exchange, which foreign exchange? I've just been doing a job just before I spoke to you, which is the Australian dollar against the US dollar, and also against the British pound. If you look at the patterns, the chart patterns, they are totally different, right? They don't match up. Every so often you get something, and both of them seem to have worked in the same direction, but for very different reasons, right? So trying to work out and compartmentalize tomorrow so that we know exactly which dollars we're talking about, Hong Kong, US, and there's a whole other language in the foreign exchange. So it's going to be interesting tomorrow to see what the questions are and where this takes us. I'm going to I'm hoping that the cosmos is going to guide us a little bit because I felt slightly out of my depth. I've done a bit of history, so I'm going to actually start off with the US dollar index, because it's a great way to get your toe into the AstroForex water.
Yeah. So at this moment, we're talking about the economic, and it sounds like a pretty interesting thing. The Pluto moving into Aquarius and started moving into Pisces. There was a little bit downward, but now, like for last couple of weeks, it's kind of picking up. Even the Bitcoin is like a boom, jump back to 30,000 US dollar.
Right. Okay. So, so I was writing about this for my Astro Crypto newsletter that just went out last night. The really interesting, I mean, Bitcoin is one thing. The far more interesting one is Ethereum and what's happening with the sharding of that's coming up over the next couple of years. They have very different charts, obviously. There's about a 6-year gap between them, so their Jupiters are in opposite places, but they have Venus in exact opposition. One at 0 Pisces and the other one 0 Virgo. And yes, it's understandable this rise up now. There will be another down before we get another up again. It's a roller coaster ride, right? But as a long-term thing, it's absolutely, this is the way things are going. I was reading up about the United Arab Emirates banks coming together with India to have a digital currency exchange. And I was writing about that, and also the collapse of the banks in the US that we've just had. Now, the really serious thing about that is that the banks that are collapsed in the US were the ones that allowed you to trade off with Bitcoin, again, for example, right, your cryptocurrencies with the normal ones. So now the US regulators have cut down on all of that. Those jobs are going to go somewhere else. So where is it going to go? Is it going to go to the Bahamas? Is it going to go to Liechtenstein? Is it going to go to Singapore? Where are those things going to go? I had one client who asked me to look at Vanuatu. I didn't even know where that was. It's a piece of rock in the Pacific. It's nothing, right? There's nobody living there, right? But they found it like an offshore banking community there. So clearly, internationally, there needs to be a home for this stuff. I think it's going to be Singapore, because Singapore was born with a Saturn-Uranus opposition, just like Bitcoin itself, and it sits in. Singapore could become the crypto capital. Right? But you're absolutely right. As Pluto's gone into Aquarius, we're now seeing this big shake-up, right? And we know, this is where the astrology helps. We know that by November 2024 and Pluto's real ingress into Aquarius, right, that all of this will be done. But between now and then, the cryptos are going to go up and down like this. And the thing to do is to buy in whenever there's a low, buy a little bit more, right? And ignore the ups because they're irrelevant. You're looking for where there's a down, because that's another buy in.
Yeah. Talking about Pluto moving into Aquarius, I think there's another astrological event that we definitely have to talk about, because it's the solar eclipse coming at 20th April, and the Sun Moon conjunct new moon is at 29 degrees. How interesting! The analytic degree, the 29 degree of Aries, and the square Pluto. Yeah.
Well, look. Obviously, every time is different. But it is useful looking back to 2004, because that's the last time we had an eclipse on exactly that degree.
Wow.
And 2004 was a really shocking, horrible year. Right? It concluded, if you remember, with the enormous tsunami in the Indian Ocean, right? Which absolutely devastating. But preceding that, in the summer, you had the hurricanes Charlie, Ivana, Ivan, was it?
In the United States.
And Jean, right? The Haitian one, right?
Mm-hmm.
The weather indicators for that year were absolutely shocking. Now, the eclipse happened virtually on the same date, same degrees. It was when the node came back to exactly that degree in the December, the 24th, 26th, I can't remember now. It was the Christmas Day
24,
tsunami.
I think it's the Boxing Day. I think it's 26 for us.
Yes, you're right, Boxing Day tsunami. And at that point, the moon was at maximum declination, and it was a full moon as well. It absolutely, the weather patterns were predictable just on that. And that really was absolutely sun, moon, node, all linked. Now, the pattern this year is different, of course, because Pluto's in a different place. But we should actually be concerned about hurricanes, I think, because these are wind-driven, right?
Wind, yeah.
And that took me to looking at, I'm looking very closely at July 18th to 21st, right? Which is that is hurricane season, right? And I think that I haven't finished the work I'm going to do on that yet, but I am really concerned about that. And I was already concerned about the Sun-Pluto opposition that comes at the end of that, towards the end of that month, because I think if I'm right about the hurricane, the effect on world markets would be really dramatic. There was a guy, I can't remember the name of this guy, but there was a guy, not an astrologer, living in southern Florida, who was predicting and showing how the hurricanes are moving further and further into the United States. They now reach the Midwest, which they didn't do before. You know, the patterns are changing. They're also moving up the East Coast. Remember Hurricane Sandy?
Yes.
Yeah, which hit New York. I mean, that was
yes.
It seemed unthinkable. But it's that kind of image that I'm imagining could happen this year. And I think this eclipse is part of that picture. But there are other things we could talk about this next 2 weeks, because I was thinking about this whole period between eclipses, you know, between the solar and the lunar.
Yes.
And we have a retrograde Mercury. Well, we had that as well in 2004, but it wasn't retrograde in Taurus. It was retrograde in Aries. So the picture's never the same. But I do wonder about this next fortnight and what might be revealed, what kind of secrets will be revealed. And you know that there's been these big leaks the other day, which they're kind of drip feeding.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
No, I haven't.
Right. This it's like a WikiLeaks type thing that which could be just as good. It's talking about Pentagon secrets that are going to be slowly released. And this all started with the Sun Jupiter-Chiron as well, right?
Yes.
And I think that's going to escalate, particularly in those 2 weeks. Sorry, you keep freezing here. I don't know quite why.
I think we both. I think it's our connection is a little
Have
bit
you frozen again.
I think from my side, yes.
No.
Yep. Here we are. We are back. Why are we talking about the Mercury retrograde and we keep freezing? That is usually the interesting things we can experience. And when we talk about some particular planet, and we can really experience that energy is right in the moment in the Zoom meeting.
Yes. Yes. All right. Point taken. Yes. I do wonder, though, what this one will be about, because Mercury will not be in its own sign. You know, it's an Earth sign. You know, and I think the nature of a retrograde Mercury is very much dependent on where it is in the zodiac. You know, I mean, it's absolutely lethal when the thing is in Gemini or Virgo. It's horrible then. You know, but Taurus, what is it? What's it actually going to scrape from under the Earth? What is it going to reveal this time?
That's pretty interesting, especially. Sorry.
I noticed something else, because I was looking at this last quarter moon just before we spoke, and this last quarter moon's at 23 of Capricorn. And if you undo that lunar cycle,
Mhm.
that takes us back to the full moon that relates to it, which is when Johnson left office.
Okay.
So I wonder what might be revealed in these next 2 weeks, right? That's related
Mm.
back to that. That's another thing.
Yeah.
And if you undo that cycle even more, you go back to the storming of the Capitol in the United States.
I
So
was just want to talk about it because when you mentioned about Johnson, you probably couldn't ignore about Trump.
no, yeah. So and I there's I don't know if you saw the news this morning, but there was a gentleman talking about the book that he's just bringing out, which is really about how MI5, MI6, and the people that you think are the spy hunters never actually really know enough, right? And it made me think about what is going to be revealed between these two eclipses. There was I don't know who can be credited to, but there's a wonderful story about eclipses, which is that you imagine that you're walking down the street, you've gone past the same house for months and months and months. They had net curtains. You've never been interested in what was inside, right? It didn't bother you. One day you go past, the net curtains have come down for laundry, and now you can see inside. And it's, if you had given it any thought, and that's a big if, right? But now you're surprised by what's there, right? And either you say, God, that decor is awful, or gosh, I wonder who lives there. But within that period, in the eclipse thing, you see behind a net curtain, you see things that you didn't see before. How you operate and how you use that information, of course, will vary from person to person. But I think it's a very good way of looking at that period between the two things, because in this instance, the lunar eclipse is coming after the solar, right?
Yes.
So it's like the dirty curtains are going to go back up. They ain't going to be washed, right? Because when it's the other way round, you're going to end up with something clean. This time, it's like somebody's going to try and hush up whatever is revealed. There's going to be a lot of effort to try and push this back down under the carpet.
Yeah.
And we know that coincides with Pluto then going back into Capricorn. And all isn't really going to be revealed until we get to an eclipse that is clear of all of that with Pluto in Aquarius. But then we really are going to see just how awful things have been.
Wow, I really love this image about, during the two eclipses and it's the net curtain coming down. So we can really use this time to find out what we can see in the cosmos, in the universe, how what is behind the curtain, and use this kind of things, knowledge to help us in our, plan.
Yes, and you can plant it in your own chart. Right? What are you going to pull behind? What which house does that thing fall in, right?
Yeah.
And where is the lunar eclipse going to fall that comes with it, right? And how do those two houses talk to one another?
Yeah. Wow, that is very helpful, I think, for our audience, especially if they are beginner. I think this is definitely an important message to find out the location of the solar eclipse and the lunar eclipse in your chart, and as you say, how these two houses related. That is something very worth to do.
It is, and you can go back to 2004, but don't for 1 minute think that there's going to be a repeat performance, because the cosmos is not Phantom of the Opera. It's not playing the same notes every night. It's not doing right. But there will be a hint of it. There will be something that you can learn from the earlier thing. So 2004 is a good time to go back to and review and look at the history of 2004. Right? Look, I think it's always very useful to look just to see what were the newspaper headlines the day after you were born, not on the day you were born, the day after. What happened as you came, right?
Oh, interesting. Is that one of the techniques you use?
Yes, it is. It's a very good technique, because you can see, it depends how you read the parents in the chart, but you're going to get some idea of what your mum and the nurses and the doctors and what were they reading about, what was influencing them. Were they scared? Like, can you imagine somebody maybe in Taiwan today, giving birth, or China today, may be anxious about the military exercises, right?
Oh yes.
So,
Yeah.
so that's part of the, there is a mechanism, a fear that is going in.
I like this idea because I know in astrology we usually see about like the day equal 1 year or something, but also the first day in your lifetime and what happened around you that definitely have the kind of a
It's really
mystical
crucial.
impact.
And Rod, one of the questions that we should all ask is what happened in the 90 days before you arrived? Right?
Ah.
Because you assume that maybe you're going to live to 90, right? We don't know that time necessarily moves forward, but what we do want to know is what was your mum experiencing in the 90 days before you were born? And supposing she was a refugee, right? And 30 days before you arrived, she was on one of those awful boats coming across from the channel, then it's reasonable to think that at roughly age 30, you're going to experience that fear flight mechanism again. So those converse directions and progressions are every bit as important as the later ones, right? And if your mum moved house 6 days before you were born, then maybe at age 6, you're going to have a sense of, I need to be somewhere different. You might run off and play with different friends. So these are imprints.
I really like this idea, and I probably should pay more attention about the converse direction. Usually, especially when I recently kind of learning to accept time is not linear. Time is not just so-called of a move forward, because it is not like that.
And part of this, Rod, is that because we are still working with relatively primitive astrology, right? The books that you fill in to, your progressions, you really do need both lots of progressions going together. Thankfully, things like solar fire will allow you to amalgamate.
Yeah.
You can put the two printouts together.
Yes. Wow. Was a lot of food of thought. Thank you, Christine. I think today we really check a little bit about the Sun Jupiter Chiron conjunction, and we spent a lot of time on the solar eclipse. Well, I will remind our audience. Tomorrow, me and Christine will have I will translate for Christine in Chinese Mandarin. We're going to talk about the foreign exchange and with the astrology view. Well, also Christine feel a little bit stressful, but I'm sure that would be amazing, because so far everything you talk, even like to be honest, all my students were so surprising by you talking about this moment, what happened between Taiwan and China, because they were just like, why are they doing that? They have no point. Oh, things happen like that. We just like, what? It's happening. It is kind of a not big surprise, to be honest, because it happens all the time. But how could you forget exactly like the period? And that is fascinating. So, we're really looking forward tomorrow. We can learn a little bit more from you about how we're going to start the currency, and then, it would be fantastic. By the way, sorry.
Oh, go on.
Because I remember you have the regular financial astrology meeting. When would be the next meeting?
The next one is on May the 14th. And the last one was absolutely, it was tremendous. It was a lovely full class, and actually it's beginning. I didn't set a program for those, but it's becoming an embedded sort of content thing. So we spend the first little bit going over recent weeks and see what we got right, what we got wrong, and then we go on and we look at gold, we look at crypto, we look at all sorts of things, right? And we will of course be analyzing this week, because I had picked out the 11th and the 12th as highly significant dates. They were the big ones. We were looking for the big moves then. But a big move needs to be followed by another. So we need to see how markets this week, and then we can analyze it.
Cool. So I think it is 14th of May.
Yeah, the 14th of May. Yeah.
14th of May. So also I will put an email on the list, but I think it's already full class. But even though, if you are interested in this financial astrology meeting, please contact Christine by email. Okay, I will put the email underneath the in the comment area.
And you must send me the link to tomorrow because somebody asked me for it and I didn't have it.
Okay, is it the enroll link or contact?
Well, I think I'd sent the email off to Brian to deal with, but
Yeah.
it would be good to have the link.
Okay, sure. I will send you a link. Yes, definitely. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, Christine, and thanks everyone for watching the Lunar Rhythm. Once a month, Christine will bring you some interesting view about the current transit and the current event. So see you next month. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Rod.